This is the Strong as a Mindset podcast, episode number 194. If you've ever had the thought, I feel like I'm failing at everything, this episode is for you. This is the Strong as a Mindset podcast, where you'll learn how to build both a strong body and a strong mind by eating, moving, and thinking. I'm your host, physician, personal trainer, certified health coach, and certified life coach, Carrie Holland. Hey, how are you? What's new? What's good? So, what's good here? We are going to talk about something that comes up all the time. It's come up for so many of my clients. It has most definitely come up for me, and I want to help you pull this apart. So, let me start with a question. Have you ever had the thought, either when you're staring at your laptop way past your bedtime trying to finish work, or when you're just standing in your kitchen while family chaos unravels around you, have you ever had the thought, I feel like I'm failing at everything? I have. My clients have. And I think we need to dissect that because we're not just talking about failing at work or parenting or marriage. We're talking about all of it, really everything. And while it generally feels terrible on the outside, it's usually not dramatic. It's usually not some catastrophic event. Instead, it's more like a low-grade, persistent sense that no matter where you look, something is lacking. Maybe you replay your uncomfortable conversation from earlier in the day. Maybe you think about the email you forgot to respond to, the homework you rushed through, the workout you skipped, the way you snapped at your partner because you were stretched too thin. So it's subtle, but it adds up. And by the time you brush your teeth at night, it feels all-encompassing. It doesn't feel like one small miss. It feels global, like you're just not doing anything in your life well. And what makes this even more confusing is that from the outside, nothing really looks like it's falling apart. You're still functioning. Your kids are clothed. Your work is getting done. You're finishing tasks. You're showing up. But on the inside, it feels like you are constantly behind at something. There's always one area of your life, if not more, that feels neglected, and it's constantly shifting. Sometimes it's work. Maybe you catch yourself thinking, I should be doing more, producing more, moving faster. I should be farther along by now. And there's this quiet pressure, not just to do your job well, but to excel, to be above average, in the top percentile, and not just keep up, but stand out. Then you come home and the pressure shifts. And there you wonder if you're present enough, involved enough, if you're somehow missing something critical that your kids will talk about with their therapist later in life. There's a low-grade fear humming underneath it all. Am I doing this wrong? Should I be more visible at school, more hands-on, more something? And then, if you have a partner, they often get whatever energy is left at the end of the day. Some nights, you're present and connected. Other nights, you're just trying to keep your eyeballs open until it's socially acceptable to go to bed. And sometimes, you are so mentally spent from decisions, from switching roles all day, from managing everyone else's needs, that intimacy feels like one more thing requiring effort. And you hate that it feels that way because you don't want it to feel transactional or like a box to check. But sometimes you are just straight up exhausted. And then the guilt creeps in. A good wife wouldn't feel this drained. A good partner would have more to give. And then with this collection of self-criticisms related to your work, your family, your partner, a narrative starts to build. I should be better at this. And from there, you collapse into one sweeping assessment. I feel like I'm failing at everything. And I have felt this multiple times in both my careers. When I was in my family medicine clinic, I would leave the office at the end of the day constantly worrying about what I missed, what I didn't get done, and what would be waiting for me in my inbox when I walked in the next morning. I would sit at dinner worrying about charts and patients and when my pager would go off. My body was at the dinner table, but my brain was still at work. And then I would feel guilty for not being fully present with my family. And even now, as an entrepreneur, it looks different, but it feels very familiar. I am almost always thinking about my work. Is this enough? Am I producing enough? Should I be creating more? What else should I be doing? There is always something I can improve or optimize. And when that noise gets loud, it spills into everything else in my life. So if you've ever had that feeling that no matter how much you're doing, it adds up to not enough, I want to unpack that today because I don't think you're failing. I think you're trying to win a game with rules that were never clearly defined. And that's where we're going to start. So let's talk about the standard, because I think there is an illusion operating here that we need to name out loud. If you're a high-achieving woman, there is a quiet expectation that you should be excellent everywhere. Not just competent, not just keeping up, not just meeting expectations. No, instead, you have to be excellent at work, fully present and engaged at home, a supportive, connected partner, fit, organized, calm under pressure, patient with your kids, growing personally, socially responsible, on top of everything, and certainly not dropping any balls. And not sometimes, not in rotation, all at once. And that is the illusion. I don't think most of us even realize we're doing this. We just assume it's possible, that if we're disciplined enough, organized enough, efficient enough, we should be able to pull this off. But here is what we don't stop to question. You can absolutely be excellent. You are already incredibly capable. But what you can't do is operate at peak in every single domain of your life at the exact same time. There is no version of grit or hustle or time management that makes the math work here. But that doesn't stop us from trying. For me, the standard was never just good. It was always above average, top percentile, quietly exceptional. I didn't want to just do my job. I wanted to do it better than most people. I didn't want to just be a decent mom. I wanted to make sure that I wasn't doing anything that would scar them. So I carried this belief that I had to get it right. Actually, not just right, but perfect. And layered on top of that was the belief that if I didn't do everything myself and do it at a 100%, that it would not be good enough. I made it my job to hold it all together. And it was fueled by the fear that if I loosened my grip, something would fall apart. And I know I'm not alone in this. And some of this wiring is cultural. Women are told we can have it all. And somewhere along the way, that became we must do it all. Some of it is professional. In certain careers, you are trained to aim high, outperform, and prove yourself. And if you're in a field historically dominated by men, there's often the added layer of pressure to demonstrate that you even belong. And some of it, at least for me, was personal. When I was younger, being good felt like protection. If I was good enough, maybe I wouldn't get scrutinized. Maybe I could prevent conflict at home. Maybe I could control something. And while that logic did not hold up at all, the pattern stuck and carried with me far beyond when I left my childhood home. I did it in medicine, overscheduling patients, leaving zero margin, no breaks, saying yes to everything for fear of being left behind. And then I did it again when I started my coaching practice, back to back clients, scheduling through lunch, taking appointments at any inconvenient hours, saying yes to every opportunity because I thought that's what ambitious people do. And when I finally reached the level of success I thought I wanted, I didn't feel satisfied. I felt completely wiped out, guilty, and also empty. And that is when I finally saw it. The problem was not my capacity. It was the belief that I had to maximize every role I played all at the same time. But what I have come to understand, and what I teach my clients now, is that different parts of your life take turns being in the spotlight. There are stretches when work expands and needs a whole lot from you. There are stretches when family needs more of you and your professional output stays steady instead of accelerates. And there are also stretches when your own wellness moves to the front, even if everything else plateaus for a bit. And what it really boils down to is that the different important areas of your life take turns getting more energy from you. Your excellence moves. And that is not underperforming in any area of your life. It's just being human. Because if you walk around expecting yourself to be at your best in every area at the same time, you will always feel like you're failing somewhere. And it's not because you are failing. It's because the expectation doesn't match reality. And this is where the math comes in. Because if we strip away the emotion for just a second and look at the structure of your life, there is a fairly simple equation at play. You have finite time, finite energy, finite attention. And then you have standards that feel infinite. So you don't have to be a math person to see the mismatch here. When you combine finite energy with infinite expectations, the outcome is predictable. The math doesn't add up. And it's not because you're failing. It's because you're trying to fit too many expectations into a fixed number of hours. Most women don't account for the background load running all day long. Things like the commute, the mental checklist of remembering who needs what and when, the decision fatigue of making hundreds of small choices before noon, the emotional labor of anticipating everyone else's needs. So even though your body might be in one place, your brain is constantly toggling between work and home. Those things don't show up on your calendar, but they still cost you. And then we layer on the standards that are rarely questioned. Like the belief that you have to answer emails immediately, or that if you don't volunteer at school, you're not invested. that your house should look a certain way, that your body should look a certain way, that your marriage should feel a certain way, that your career should be climbing steadily upward. Most of these expectations were quietly absorbed through culture, your profession, your family of origin, or social media. And we never stop to ask whether these standards are realistic. So, if you were to map out your actual 24 hours, not in a productivity hack kind of way, but just honestly, what would you see? You'd see sleep, hopefully. You'd see work hours that often stretch much longer than you planned. You'd see the drive time, prep time, cleanup time, 15-minute fragments that don't look like much but add up. Finding shoes, answering texts, flipping laundry, packing lunches, paying bills, decompressing after a hard conversation. And somewhere in that same 24 hours, you're supposed to fit peak professional performance, emotionally engaged parenting, a connected marriage, strength training, friendships, self-development, and looking like you just stepped out of a salon. When you lay it out that way, it's not dramatic, it's just math. And of course, you feel like you're falling short. There just isn't space for everything to be operating at full capacity all at the same time. There are only so many hours you have in a day, only so much attention, only so much energy. And if you keep adding to your day without taking anything off, something will always feel unfinished. And this does not mean you're failing. It means the demand exceeds the supply. Most of us don't question that structure at all. Instead, we assume the answer is to try harder, be more efficient, get up earlier, optimize the system. But if nothing ever comes off the list, then no amount of effort changes the equation. And that's why it keeps feeling like you're not doing enough. And there's another layer to add to this that doesn't get much attention. It's not just that the math doesn't work out, it's that you're switching identities all day long. You don't just go from one task to another, you move from one operating system to another. You go from professional brain, analytical, efficient, decisive, to mom or caregiver brain, where you're supposed to be patient and emotionally dialed in. Then you shift to partner brain. Then maybe back into professional brain at 9 p.m. when you open your laptop again. And somewhere in there, you're also trying to be healthy and disciplined, calm, organized, and self-improving. And each one of those roles puts you in a different gear. You speak differently, you prioritize differently, you respond differently, because what works in one space doesn't always translate nicely into the next. And we act like that switch should be easy and seamless, but it's not. What I notice most in myself and in my clients is the friction at those transition points, especially at the end of the workday. You close your laptop or walk in the door, and within seconds, you are needed. There's dinner, homework, logistics, questions, chores, noise. But your brain hasn't fully powered down from work. It's still running spreadsheets or replaying conversations or thinking about to-do lists. You're still solving problems that you didn't finish. You're physically home, but mentally divided. And that split can feel like failure. It feels frantic, heavy, irritating, sometimes even sad. And there's an internal voice that asks, why can't I just do this better? But here's what's actually happening. When you spend the entire day switching roles, your nervous system gets taxed. And not in a dramatic collapse on the floor kind of way, but just in a steady, cumulative way that leaves you thin. And when you're depleted, your brain doesn't say, hey, that was a lot of role shifting today. It doesn't say, you've been flipping identities for 12 plus hours. Instead, your brain scans for what's wrong. And when your life is that full, you can be sure it will always find something wrong. Like you didn't answer that email. You weren't patient enough at bedtime. You didn't get your workout in. You were not fully present. Exhaustion really isn't the core problem. The distortion is. But exhaustion makes the distortion louder. And here is what that distortion sounds like. Your brain creates a story that goes something like, if I didn't get everything done, I must be doing all of it badly. But that is a really big leap to make. There is an important difference between not doing everything and doing everything poorly. Those are not the same thing. But the high-achieving women I work with tend to lump this all together. So if you didn't answer every email, you're irresponsible. If you weren't fully present at dinner, you're a bad mom. If you don't feel connected to your partner, you're distant. If you skip the workout, you've lost discipline. And notice what happens there. It's not a neutral observation. It's an identity statement. So you move from something didn't get done to something is wrong with me. Do you see that? It's huge. And it's subtle, but it's so powerful. High-achieving women are especially prone to this because you're used to tying your worth to your output. So if you're not executing at the highest level in every role, your brain reads that as a global failure. But that's not what's actually happening. You might be doing a perfectly solid job at work. You might be showing up in a steady, imperfect, very normal way at home. You might just be tired, but because you're not operating at an A+ across the board, your brain reads that as slipping, and that is a distortion. And there's another layer to this. At work, you usually know how you're doing. There are metrics, outcomes, feedback, performance reviews. You can see progress. You can measure competence. But at home, there is no performance review. There is no clear scoreboard, nor should there be. The tasks, they repeat. The work resets. You clean something and it's messy again 5 minutes later. You can pour into your kids and still have a really hard night. There is no visible metric telling you that you're doing a good job. So even if you're doing a steady, solid job in both places, one feels measurable and the other feels ambiguous. And when something feels ambiguous, your brain tends to interpret that as not good enough. And that comparison isn't fair, but it's often automatic. And so here is what I want to offer you instead. The issue is not that you're incapable. It's also not that you lack discipline. Often, when you feel like you're failing at everything, it's because you're measuring yourself against a standard that requires you to perform every role at the highest level every single day. But that is not how real life works. Real life is dynamic. It's messy. It's unpredictable. Some days you have more to give. Some days you are just getting by, but that doesn't mean that anything's going wrong. And let me be clear here, this is not toxic positivity. I'm not telling you you're crushing it. Don't worry. No. I'm also not telling you to pretend everything is fine when it isn't. There is something much more practical to consider here, and that is this. You are not failing, you're allocating. So what exactly does that mean? Well, every single day, whether you realize it and name it or not, you are making decisions about where your energy goes. So there are stretches when work expands and demands more of your time and focus. There are stretches when your family needs more from you and your work stays steady instead of accelerating. And then there are times when your own health or mental space has to move up front, even if everything else hangs for a bit. And that doesn't mean the roles getting less of your energy are being done wrong. It just means that you have limits and you have to allocate your energy to match those limits. And limits, they are not moral failures, okay? Limits are the reality of being a human instead of a superhuman. So excellence doesn't live at an A+ in every category of your life all the time. It moves, it adjusts, it shifts depending on what the day actually requires. And that's not underperforming, that's being responsive. And responsiveness is far more sustainable than constant overdrive. And please remember that stability counts a lot. Showing up in a steady, imperfect, but consistent way across multiple parts of your life, it may not feel dramatic. It may not look impressive. It may not feel like you're excelling, but that's okay because it's sustainable. And sustainable is what allows you to stay in the game without burning out. It keeps your marriage steady. It keeps your kids feeling secure. It allows your career to grow without consuming you. You don't need to be fully optimized to be effective. You don't need to be fully present every single second to be a good parent or partner. Partial presence is not absence. There will be moments you miss. There will be days when you feel more scattered than you'd like. But that does not erase the hundreds of steady, ordinary times when you are showing up. So this is not a zero-sum game here. You're not winning or losing at this. It's a dynamic system. And what matters more than being perfect in every role is how you respond when things feel stretched. Do you collapse into, I'm failing at everything? Or do you pause, reassess, and decide where your energy goes next? Because that is the work, not perfection, but responsiveness that takes into account what you have the bandwidth for. And so here's how you practice it. The next time you think, I'm failing at everything, I want you to run it through these 3 filters. First, get specific, because everything is not a circumstance. That is a verdict. It's your brain taking 1 or 2 misses and turning them into a conclusion about your entire life. Instead of letting it stay vague and dramatic and huge, force it to get concrete. What exactly didn't happen? One thing, not everything. One thing. Was it that you didn't respond to an email, that dinner felt chaotic, that you didn't get the workout in, that you were impatient at bedtime? Name the actual thing, because once you name it, it becomes workable and it stops feeling like your whole life is broken. And then second, ask where your energy did go today, because most definitely it went somewhere. Work, a hard conversation, a sick kid, a deadline, logistics. Your energy doesn't just disappear, it gets used. So instead of defaulting to, I didn't do enough, I want you to see the truth. You did do things, you just didn't do everything. So think about where your energy did go today. And then third, decide what deserves your attention next. Again, not everything, but the next thing. That's it. Maybe you clean up one small loose end. Maybe you reset for tomorrow. Maybe you go to bed. Maybe you have a conversation. Maybe you take 10 minutes for yourself. But whatever it is, you choose intentionally instead of spiraling. That's it. So we're not talking about a personality overhaul here, not a productivity hack, just a reset from a global judgment of failure that feels huge and insurmountable to a specific, real, doable adjustment that meets you where you're at right now. Because when you zoom out and label your entire life as failing, your brain freaks out and shuts down. But when you zoom in and adjust one small thing at a time, you regain your agency. And that is the difference. So here's what I want you to remember. The next time you think to yourself, I'm failing at everything, I don't want you to argue with it. Don't panic, okay? Instead, I want you to slow down before you accept it as fact. Instead of making a global assessment of your entire life, hang on, slow it down, get specific, and stop letting I'm failing at everything be your headline. Because there's a big difference between a life that is collapsing and a life that just has a lot in motion. And I think a lot of high-achieving women confuse the two. A collapsing life feels chaotic because things are unraveling. A full life feels chaotic because there's a lot happening. Those are not the same thing. You're juggling work, family, relationships, health, responsibilities, and you care about all of it. So of course it's going to feel stretched sometimes. Of course there are going to be trade-offs. And of course something is occasionally going to feel behind. And maybe the question isn't, am I doing everything perfectly? Maybe the better question is, given the energy I had today, did I use it in a way that aligns with what matters? That is a much more fair evaluation because you're not failing at everything. You're navigating a full life with a finite supply of energy. And doing that imperfectly doesn't mean you're collapsing. It means you're human. So there will always be something unfinished. There will always be a moment you wish you handled differently. And there will always be part of you that thinks you could have done more. That voice might never disappear entirely. But it doesn't get to run the show. You are allowed to have days where you're good instead of exceptional. You are allowed to care about the multiple roles you play in your life without maximizing each and every one of them all at once. And maybe the work isn't to eliminate the feeling of I'm failing at everything. Maybe the work instead is refusing to let one difficult moment define your entire life. Maybe the work is to separate data from drama and look at evidence instead of fear. And when you do that, what you often find isn't failure. Instead, it's effort, responsibility, love, drive, and someone trying very hard to do a lot of important things well. And that is most definitely not failing. That is caring. And if this pattern feels familiar, if you're tired of swinging between overdrive and self-criticism, this is exactly the kind of thing we untangle in coaching. We'll look at your work, your family, your standards, and decide where your energy goes. If you're ready for that, send me a message at www.carriehollandmd.com/contact, and let's talk about how coaching can help you. All right? Thank you again for hanging out with me, and I'll catch you again next week. Hey, if you want to build muscle but don't know where to start, I've got you covered. Head over to carriehollandmd.com/buildstrength and download my free guide to help you maximize your strength training. Inside, you'll find the essential exercises for building muscle, plus simple 1, 2, and 3-day workout plans that you can follow with just dumbbells and a bench. You'll also find strength training tips to help you train smarter and see real results. My goal is to help you get strong, and this strength training guide will help you do it. Go to carriehollandmd.com/buildstrength and check it out. Thank you for listening to the Strong is a Mindset podcast. If you want to learn more about how to build both a strong mind and a strong body by eating, moving, and most importantly, thinking, check out carriehollandmd.com.